Hello and welcome to Excel Essentials. In this session, we'll be covering pivot tables. Pivot tables in Excel is an amazing tool and it allows you to summarize, analyze, and sift through large data sets pretty easily. It allows you to pull meaningful data and insights from your data set, no matter how large or how small. And it makes it more manageable and in a format that's a lot easier to understand. When I first used Excel and I remember seeing pivot tables, it was the scariest thing in the world. But it's pretty simple to create your own pivot tables. There are lots of different uses, and we'll go through that with the data we have on screen shortly. Pivot tables allow you to filter and sort data sets as well, so you can have a look at the data you really want to funnel down on. Now, as you can see, we've got a set of data which is HR data, but that's not the only thing you can use pivot tables on. This could be on sales within a business. You could look at salesperson data. You can really do a lot with pivot tables. You can drill down how many devices there are in a host pool, for example, on Azure. It's just really dependent on what use case you want to use it for to make that data a lot easier to consume. So as you see, we do have this HR data and it's got employees' names, locations, emails, departments, date of hire, their grade, and who their manager is. Now, in Excel, you have two buttons for creating a pivot table. Now, your table can be something like this, which is not created as an actual table within Excel, or it can be created like a table. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the data set, or just have one cell selected within my data set. And we're going to go to the Insert tab. And as you see on the top left hand side, we have two different buttons, Pivot Table and Recommended Pivot Tables. Now, if you're completely new to this, you might want to have a look at Recommended Pivot Tables first. So if you click on that, what Excel does is it selects your entire data set, and then based off of that, it will start providing you information and insights of how you may want to present the data. So as you can see from here, it's got a count of employees by their base location, that being in Jersey, Mexico, the UK, and the US. You can have a count of employees by their departments, and we can see there's a breakdown there. You can have a look at the count of employees by their grade. And then finally, you can have a count of employees against their managers. So some managers might have a few people, some might have a lot more. But if none of these are okay for you, you can click on blank pivot table, which will work the same way as just clicking on the pivot table button anyway. So we're going to use one of these presets, and then we're going to go and replicate that as well. So we'll do count of employee by department and click OK. And as you see, it's created a brand new worksheet for us, and it's put the pivot table in there. And as you see on the right hand side, we have this pivot table fields. And as you may recognize here are all the column names for the different columns within our table. And as you see, there's a tick against employee name and a tick against department. And if we look a little further down, we see department is under rows and count of employee name is under values. Now, if I go through each of these different sections, the filter allows you to filter your entire pivot table based on specific criteria that you select. So say for example, I want a breakdown and I want it for only those in, let's say, the United Kingdom for their department. This is where you could then drag in their base location into filters. So as you can see, there's now a little green line for me there, and if I just drop it, we can now see that there is a filter at the top, and at the moment all the base locations are selected. And if I click on the drop down, I can then select the United Kingdom and click OK. And as we see, it then filters the entirety of the pivot table. So if I was to then change that to say Mexico, we would see a different sort of pivot table generated based on those who are in Mexico and the departments available there. Now, you may have seen you could select multiple items. So let's say you wanted to have a look at Mexico and the United States. You could click on the select multiple items and select whichever ones you need. Once you click OK, it will generate both for you so you can have the combination of both of those regions. Now, columns is a good way to display data horizontally. So what we could also do is drag in base location into columns, and we're just going to do that. As you see, it's used the same filter we've already used, and it's got it here in our column labels, and it's got it here in our base location. And as you can see now, we have a split of Mexico against the US. If at any time you want to unfilter, you can either come up here and click clear filter from base location, or you can go over to your pivot table fields list, click on the item and click clear filter from base location. And now, as you see, we've got countries and regions across the top, and we have departments across the left hand side. Now, this is useful for comparing data on the left hand side against the top, and it gives you a nice little split. So you can see there are 2 people in HR in Jersey, and if we double click onto that, we can see that there is a nice breakdown, and we have both of those people who work in HR in Jersey. And then a lovely new feature within Excel is you get this details at the top, which is automatically generated from your pivot table. So you see it's details for count of employee name, department is human resources, and their base location is Jersey, which we see matches here. So you've got a nice drill down view. If we go back to our pivot table, if we move on to rows, we're just going to drag base location from columns into rows, and we're just going to drop it under department for the moment. Now what we get here are nested rows. So what we can see is the country split under each department. And now this is very useful to see. It's not conventional having base location under department, so you may wish to switch this round, for example. And to do that in your rows, you would just click on department, and then you would just hold it and drag it under base location. And the pivot table resorts that entirely for you. And finally, the values is where you can place fields where you want to summarize or calculate data. Now, because employee name is a string and a text field, you don't get it trying to sum the numbers in there because it's string, it's text, it doesn't have numbers in there. Whereas if it was something like it was a column dealing with costs, it would automatically try to create a sum of that, even if you just wanted to do a count. You can also, if you click on this little drop down next to count of employee name, you can click on value field settings. So if for whatever reason it automatically jumps to sum and you want to count, you can change that in here and click on count, and then just click OK, and it will automatically update that for you. So now I'll also show you how to do it from scratch. So we're just going to come here, we're going to go to Insert and click on Pivot Table. Here we're going to select a new worksheet and we're going to click OK. Let's say we want to organize it by managers and their base locations, and we want to see how many people are under each manager in each location. So we're going to do manager. We're going to do that in rows because there's quite a few managers. And we're going to do base location as columns. And as you can see, that's going to make it a lot easier to look at rather than scrolling horizontally because it's conventional to scroll up and down. And we want each person that comes in underneath, so we'll drag employee name under values, and that comes in as count. So as we can see, for example, some people manage people in one location, whereas the odd person manages more than one person in more than one location. So that's just another way that you can do pivot tables. Now, let's say someone adds data to that table, and because it's not a normal table, it doesn't expand. So we're just going to add in another row. We're going to call this test user, and we're going to say they work in the United Kingdom. Test.user at cookiefactory.com, for example. Let's say they work in human resources. Their start date is today. They're a grade 4 and they report into, let's just say, myself, for example. So for example, we should see another number against human resources and the UK, and under myself as the manager. Now if we right click on the table and do refresh, we can see this number has not gone up from 1001. And this is because on tables that aren't, or data sets selected for your pivot table, which aren't the actual tables in Excel, what happens is Excel will only look at that data range. So if we go back to pivot table analyze and we click change data source, this is where you can go back in, select on your data and do Control A to select everything again. And as you see, that's now gone up to 1003. And now if we hit OK, we can now see the total in the table has gone up to 1002, and this has gone up to 17. Stay tuned for more Excel Essentials.